the very first episode, the very first show in the Sales Today Procurement Special Series. So thank you for those who tuned in for this very first episode. If we haven't met before, my name is Fred Copestake. I am founder of Brindis, which is a sales training consultancy. Over the last 25 years, traveled around the world 14 times, I calculated, worked in over 38 countries now and trained over 10,000 salespeople, which has, it's been an honor, privilege, fun, a bit stressy sometimes, but also it's given me insights into what salespeople are doing and what they need to do to be most effective. So it was a real honor, actually, when I was approached by Alchemie Network saying, would you like to come along and share some stuff with us about what salespeople are trying to do, what should they be doing, what can we look out for that is good practice, and how can we help this, what dodgy stuff are they doing? Yeah, and which I'll share. I mean, if you ask me about this stuff, I will share it so you can recognize it and you can get rid of the people that you don't want to be talking to, but you can encourage the people that you can see are trying to do stuff with the best intent. Yeah, fabulous that I'm here. Well, no, I think it's very fabulous that you've asked me. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do in the very first episode? What can we do to get things up and running? Not too heavy, something that's going to be useful, and give people a bit of food for thought. At the end of the day, that's what I believe these sessions are about, giving people something to think about. And I thought, well, what about going through a little evolution of sales? How has sales evolved? What have salespeople been doing over the last few years, few decades? Some of the things that they still do and should, some of the things that they still do and shouldn't, and some of the modern tweaks that they are developing to try to do a good job. And ultimately, really, I will be talking about salespeople trying to do a good job, highlighting that stuff, very much in line with one of the books that sat behind me, my most recent, which is Ethical Selling. So I thought, yeah, let's do a little spin along the decades of the evolution of sales. Hopefully you guys will recognize some of this stuff, you recognize some of the good stuff, and know why we're doing what we're doing. So I'm going to go back to the 50s. So we're going to do a little bit of time travel on this, go back to the 50s. And what you'll see is actually that a lot of the sales behaviors, a lot of the things which were going on, people will be reflecting what was going on at the time. Yeah, I do need to pick up on that comment from Alex. I don't look that old. I'm figuratively going back. I'm time traveling like the Doctor, Doctor Who. But yeah, you'll see that kind of what was going on in each of these eras would affect what was going on in the world at the time. So if you think about what was going on in the 50s, post-war, rebuilding, all about being efficient and effective. And so a lot of the sales training, a lot of the sales stuff that people were looking at was process, having tried and tested methods, having systems, having ways of working, which meant they could do the right thing time and time again. Now, I would look back at that and say, well, absolutely, we still need some of that. People need process. They need to be going through frameworks and they need to be doing things that are going to make a difference, whether that be the way they make a phone call, the way they run a meeting, how they put an account plan together. So some older fashioned stuff, if you want, to more modern stuff, which might be how they put together a social media post, how they build a digital sales room. All of these things have structure. And so I think, so putting my procurement thinking on, and this is where I will ask you guys to help me. I'm here to learn as well, right? I would think from that point of view that you would want to have a salesperson that's putting the effort into having a structure that works, a framework that is friendly to both parties to make sure that we're not messing about and wasting time. Yeah, so that's why I'd say if you're seeing a salesperson that is using structure, that's a good thing and they'll be using it for a reason. Maybe they're using it, but you can't really detect it. They might be a bit more elegant with it. But even if somebody's a little bit kind of clunky, I think it's probably most likely with good intent, because they're trying to do the right thing by you, by them. So we shall see a lot of that going on. Let's go back into the 50s. Yeah. We go back into the 60s. We go back into when Alex was at his prime. Sorry, Alex, you started it. No, so go back to the 60s, and what we saw here was this fascination with the brain, how people's mind work, how they thought. So what we saw from World of Sales was a lot of stuff to do with the psychology of selling. And this is about trying to recognize personal styles, how people would think, and how we could align ourselves and adjust what we say and what we do to something that's going to be more comfortable with the other party. So again, this isn't about being manipulative. It's not trying to use Jedi mind tricks to make people do stuff they don't want to. It's working out what's their personal style. And so the way in which I communicate, how can I do that more effectively? It's going to be more comfortable for them. Is it somebody that needs a ton of information? They're very detailed people. They need to go into a lot of facts and figures, dot the I's, crossing the T's. Got to give them that. Could be someone who makes decisions very fast, get to the point, they don't want to mess around, it's all about results. Again, we'll make a response to that. Could be someone who's quite friendly, quite caring, quite sympathetic, where the personal element of it, the trust building, is more important than the other styles. Again, we'll make an adaptation to that. Or it could be someone who's quite expressive, who likes talking, who gets kind of lost in some of their thinking and goes off on little detours because it kind of makes sense to them. And again, we can respond to that. So a good salesperson would be picking up on these different styles so that they can do the thing which works best. And so picking up on a little comment there, sounds like describing different cultures. It can do a little bit. It can do a little bit because certain cultures have certain personalities. But again, it will be a smart thing for a salesperson to do, to think, well, this is who I'm saying to you. This is where they're from. This is how they would most likely be acting. I'm going to do the stuff that's most comfortable for them. That's why they're doing it. Not to manipulate, not to trick, not to be dodgy. So again, if you see a salesperson that's acting like a bit of a chameleon or talking about that way of operating, they're trying to do it. So what they're doing is landing better and making life easier for you. So think about it from that point of view. Again, I think it's a kind thing for somebody to do. Yeah. So recognizing the different personal styles, different personalities, the way the brain's wired. So we looked at that. So that's 50s and that's 60s. We can have and again, the little modern adaptation of that, and this kind of does people's head in when I talk to them about it, if they haven't really worked out how. I say, you can read somebody's style before you've met them. Understand somebody's style before you've met them. I wish those people kind of go, oh, how do you do this then? There's some clever software out there. There's some clever technology that if you plug it into LinkedIn, it can read on what people have done and put out there all over the internet, and it'll kind of give you a little graph of what the personal style is. So you can start to make the adaptations to somebody before you've met them. Very first message you send to somebody could be aligned to their style. Yes, it's wow. So Crystal Knows, Knows, like Crystal, girl's name knows because she knows, or Humantic AI. Go and get one of those. Go and have a little play with it. And of course, you're going to put your mates, your partner in there, are you? It's frighteningly accurate. And then it gives little prompts in how you can adjust your style to work with each of them. So yeah, it's all pretty cool. So where are we? Okay, so that's 50s and 60s. Let's go into the 70s. Go into the 70s. Here we would be talking about benefit selling people benefits. So feature, advantage, benefit. I'd say now there's too many salespeople that still sell on features, but we should be talking about the benefit that somebody's looking for. What's in it for me? Why are they looking to purchase something? And the kind of the famous phrase, and I'm going to put a little quiz question and perhaps a little prize for whoever can put who said this. It's about that people don't buy a drill. Yeah, they buy the hole, or the place where they can put the peg in the walls, they can hang the picture on it. I don't know, could even argue, well, it's the picture they're putting on it, could be their anniversary picture with the date on it, so they don't miss it and they don't get in trouble. Not the reason I have mine on the wall at all, just saying one might do it for that reason. But yeah, people don't buy the drill, they buy the hole. Anybody want to guess into chat, who was it who said that? Who was it who said that? It's a Harvard Business School professor. So this stuff is still absolutely true. People are buying for their reasons, the benefit they get from something. I think as we kind of look at, Fred Copestake didn't say it. Fred Copestake is not a Harvard Business School professor. Fred reads what they say and then turns it into stuff that he can use in presentations. Yeah, people are still sort of buying things for their own reasons, but as we start to understand it and we think, okay, sales is evolving, understanding how we can work with people, how we can do a better job, there's other things that come into play. Now, unfortunately, the 80s came next on our little trip through history. And when I think of the 80s, apart from like, wow, music was really good, was that it's that whole kind of greed is good type decade. Yeah, close. And yes, the answer has just got into chat about who said the drill, not, or the hole, not the drill. It was Professor Theodore Levitt. But yeah, in the 80s, yeah, greed is good. Again, they've got another little quiz question, similar on names, pop it into chat. Greed is good, and we got this whole close. Sales training was about objection handling. And this is where we kind of get this arm wrestling type combative approach to the way we might engage buyers, the way we might deal with them, and try to force them into doing stuff that suits us, but not necessarily them. It's actually not a new take on sales, because kind of the sales is a bit sleazy, goes right back to the 1890s when the whole snake oil sales guys were at play. But yeah, objection handling, we still call it because it's what sells courses. Yeah, it's something that unfortunately is a cross we still have to bear from a sales training point of view, or from a sales point of view. And some people are stuck at it, and you might see people who have that as their go-to style, and they're not doing much of the other stuff that I'm talking about, and certainly going on to talk about. If that's the case, and this is where my sales colleagues are going to hate me, I'd say that you probably ought to have a bit of a think about whether you really do want to engage with them, because there will be people out there who've got a different take on sales and can be doing stuff a lot better to help you in achieving what you're looking to achieve, the outcomes that you're looking to enjoy. And that's what starts to happen. So let's go quickly into the 90s, because again, apart from, yes, look, sales does need commitment. It needs moving forward. There's different stages in a buying process. This involves getting procurement involved. We know this. So yeah, this is something that still happens, but there is certainly something that, if we start to look in the 90s, there was a sea change in selling. So I think it was William Shakespeare who talked about the sea change, as in the sea, the briny stuff. I'm talking about C, as in C for consultative selling. This is when Neil Rackham came along and did a bunch of research into what the best salespeople were doing. And he found that it wasn't what they were being trained to do, which is objection handling, feel, felt, found, calm, listen, acknowledge, pause, sell again, all that good stuff. They were just asking better questions. And it wasn't just asking better questions to understand the customers better. They were doing something in a way which really drilled down on the customer's need. So they were helping people to understand what it is that they were trying to achieve, and more than anything, where they were now, where they would want to be, and what that difference was. And so the bigger the difference from somebody being in this position to what would be the ideal position for them, that's the bigger the need. And that is something that they could then work to close up for the customer. So this was a big piece from the sales world, and still is. For me, this stuff is foundational. It's what a good salesperson would understand. They'd understand this consultative questioning. So whether they're using Spin, which was the original, Neil Rackham, or they're using another version where the structure to ask questions focuses on the initial issues and what those impacts might be, positive or negative. So this could be a vicious circle going down. If you don't do this and this happens, or a virtuous circle. Then this type of questioning, consultative questioning, is absolutely key. Yeah. And so, yeah, look at one of the comments there in chat. Also, back then, procurement was purchasing and only just started to develop strategically. So I'm imagining that people who are working consultative and purchasers who are working strategic, they could get a ton more benefit, or let's go into the next word I'm going to use, a lot more value from those conversations, because that's where we went next. So from the sales point of view, sales training point of view, that's where we moved on to, where we start to talk about value-based selling. So it's taking some of the consultative stuff, it's taking the good process stuff, it's taking understanding the people stuff, but it's wrapping it up into a way where we're really focusing in on what value is for a customer. And I will often ask on sales training, who defines value? Might as well ask it now. Might as well ask it now while I have a little sip of coffee. You can pop it in there. Who defines value? Who defines value? Now, this is a message that goes loud and clear to salespeople. Absolutely, it is the customer. It's the customer. It's like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. So that's a message which goes to salespeople. Now, what also then goes is that does not mean we cannot work together to help the said person understand what value might be to them. But this isn't telling them what it is. This is working on sharing perspectives, sharing insights in perspective, interesting pieces of information, things to help people think, like the questioning structure in itself, but also these little nuggets which just alert somebody that there could be a better way of doing something. That's not lecturing them. It's not going into full pitch or presentation mode. It's saying, look, here is stuff that's going on, which you might well be aware of and reacting to. You might not be aware of, but you need to react to. So that's what we mean by the value-based selling approach. It's getting these conversations, which can be valuable in themselves, to help people discover, yeah, this is where we need to be going. This is what we can do. And then we can start to put return on investment and some other elements around that. But from a sales training point of view, what I'll often be doing is saying to people, right, we need to go right back to the very beginning of the value proposition. And notice it is value proposition, not proposition, because too many salespeople propose, say, hey, here is stuff. Going right back to the value part, which is likely to be driven from something outside of the organization. So a smart salesperson will look at external drivers. They'll look at the things which are happening, which are incontrovertible. They're stuff you can't argue with. So regulatory, economic, social, political, environmental, competitive, technological things that are going on, which may or may not be having an impact on their customer, potential customer. They do a bit of homework, they work out, well, this one seems to be a new bit of legislation here. If these guys don't comply to it, they're going to be a bit of a problem. Well, let's go and talk to them about that. This is coming along down the line. How are you working with this? And kickstarting the conversation around that. That's valuable in itself, and then we can start to explore stuff. Yeah. So this is where a good salesperson will want to work. And they could be approaching procurement, they could be approaching engineering. Let's say we're selling to engineering. They could be talking to whichever part of the organization they see would be having to deal with that effect. Now, it could well be that it's at the top end, it's the C-suite. The guys are going to be changing the plans. So it could be that people are trying to get involved earlier on. But this is, as you say, this is the noughties. Yeah, we talked about this stuff in the noughties, value-based selling. We've gone from 50s, 60s, 70s benefit, 80s closing, 90s consultative, noughties value-based selling. So this is what we would want salespeople to be talking about. Yeah, so I can see a little question coming in here. Let me just have a look, try and answer this one on the fly. Sales often talks about creating value, while procurement is focused on capturing it. How do we bridge that philosophical gap in a way that benefits both sides? Simple answer for me, and again, I'm very happy to debate this one further. We can put a whole show out about this. By talking, by understanding what the other party's actually trying to do. Yeah, look, the salesperson is trying to make sales. Of course they are. We know that. No massive surprise. But the salesperson needs to be understanding what the customer is trying to do. And it could be that different parts of the customer are trying to do slightly different stuff. I think that by salespeople understanding what procurement are doing, what you're measured on, and how you go about work means that they can position stuff in a way that ticks your box just as much would be ticking the box from engineering or sales or whoever. So, you know, it's good to talk. There we go. Can anyone remember that advert? That probably is 80s, actually. It's good to talk. What are you trying to do here? And my advice to salespeople is get involved earlier. I think I was probably given advice back in the 90s when I was a salesperson. I might have even given it as a sales trainer. Don't shout at me too much, but definitely not now. Not to ignore, not to try and scoot around procurement, lots to hope they're not going to notice or anything like that. It's to say, let's get involved early. And if, say, you know, I do a lot of work with engineering companies, and so I'm saying to them, look, if you're talking to engineers and this is where a lot of the value is going to be realized and this is where you see it going, your job is to guide your other party into talking to their procurement potentially. Well, they're going to say, yes, we did need to get involved. Actually, no, we don't, but thanks for involving us. Carry on doing what you're doing. So that is very much the advice that I'm giving there. It's a 94 advert. Good to talk. Yeah, so yeah, this focus on value-based selling, it's still very much part and parcel of what we look at today as we start to layer up and build these different, what I would say, best practices in sales, because it gets the best outcomes, it gets the best results for what the customer's trying to do. Let's keep skipping on. Got a little eye on the clock. I was always going to try and keep this reasonably short, try and keep it half an hour. So in the tens, the word I was using in the tens was having a sales stature. So I couldn't think of anything else to call it, but this was like putting yourself out there as being the go-to person that knew their stuff was valuable to potential customers and that they would want to speak to you. I suppose we'd call that personal branding now, though I find that certainly a lot of the salespeople I work with, they recoil at that phrase. They don't like it. I'm not bloody influencer type stuff. However, if I say, well, you want an enhanced reputation in your marketplace, that you're good at what you're doing and that customers would want to come to you because people say you're good and you put proof out that you're good. Well, yeah, of course I do. Okay, well, that's kind of what we're talking about. So this is where using, well, LinkedIn probably as much as anything as the go-to where most business professionals be hanging out, and putting stuff out there to demonstrate the value that you could potentially bring. So there's a whole bunch of tools and techniques and ways to do stuff around that. I mean, I would say from a procurement point of view, and again, look, if I'm expressing any opinions here and you violently agree or violently disagree, please let me know. I'm here to learn. Like I say, I'll keep saying this. But if you're seeing somebody that's putting stuff out there, it's because they get this stuff and they're making the effort to be the go-to person because ultimately they want to do a good job for their customers. Yeah. So yeah, think about it from that point of view. Another little comment coming in there. I like all of these there. Remember, someone said to me, keep it short and sweet. In a lift, you have 15 seconds to show the value you can bring to an organization. Yeah, elevator pitch. Yeah, I can tell you must be British if you use the word lift. Lift chat. It's the British version of elevator pitch. It's saying, yeah, done my research. I reckon this is stuff that you guys are trying to achieve, and so this is why we want to have a talk. Bingo. Wow, you're right. You need a lot of floors. Yeah, you're in Burge anyway, aren't you? So you'll be all right. Burj Khalifa, we can chat for about 20 minutes till we get to the top. Oh, what a massive waste of time that left journey was. So yeah, to be concise though is actually quite tough. I do spend a lot of time trying to get salespeople to say stuff shorter and simpler. Hope you guys thank me for doing that. But what I often find is people like have a short, simple way of saying something and then spend a bunch of time trying to make it sound really complicated and more intelligent and interesting, which is hard to get your head around. Yeah, we want to keep things short and sweet. And actually, it's something that I find that people who do use social media quite a lot and get into the habit, actually it does improve how you communicate, because you get used to doing stuff in short, punchy ways to get the message across fast, because people have that short attention span. Where are we? Okay, so along 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, 10s. So 10s for sales stature takes us to 20s. So 20s, for me, this was all about collaborative selling. That's something we push back. Well, what's the difference between collaborative and consultative? Well, I'd say that the consultative plus the value plus demonstrating yourself as go-to person means you're in a better position to sit alongside the customer. And so this is where we can co-create and collaborate. We have better thought process because we think like a partner. We have better thought processes in how we can actually work together to make 2 and 2 equal 5. So yeah, collaborative selling, I would say, is where we're going to where we are in the 20s. We're mid-20s now, aren't we? That's actually why I wrote that book. That's that first book, the Selling Through Partnering Skills. Partnering skills, which I'll cover in another show, are 6 elements that if you bake it into your sales process, you'll be better at working with the customer. And so that's what I'll do in the next show that I do. I'll go through these 6 elements, highlight what I think the salesperson should be doing, so you can catch them doing things right and saying, well, actually, yes, it does take 2 to tango, and I want to work with you because I can see that that's the way in which you're operating, and it is with this kind of win-win outcome at mind, and the kind of that we want to both achieve stuff together. So that's the next little show on there. Yeah, so there we go. So we've got the sort of the evolution of sales, if you like, taking us up to the 20s. Yeah, clearly we've got AI going on in there. I think that at the moment that means that salespeople can do a better job in some of the consultative, value-based, collaborative stuff, because there's more information than ever. No excuse not to really understand customers and what they're trying to achieve and how they might be thinking, to set up a hypothesis or an intelligent assumption I often talk about. So yeah, that's kind of our little evolution of sales over the years. Kind of stopping or putting a bit of a pause on there in the 20s, because I want to take you through in the next episode, which is in a month's time, what those 6 elements of partnering skills are. 6 elements of partnering skills are. So there we go. What else have I got in the chat there? So we're going back up and down the Burj Khalifa. Okay, there's a bit of Dubai abuse going on in there, which I like. We also need to sell ideas and strategies to our internal stakeholders. Many who don't want procurement involved think they better we don't change. Okay, so that is where thinking like a partner, because if you think you're acting like a partner, again, I know some more strategic thinking procurement people get the partnering side. When we look at those elements and some of the tactics that we can start to use to position ourselves like that, people respond to it better. That's why it's just a smart way to sell. That's why I've kind of gone down that route and where we need to go to be modern. So absolutely, selling ideas, selling concepts. Everybody lives by selling something, actually. Last quiz question of the day into chat. Who said everybody lived by selling something? So do you talk about value proposition? I think you might have just jumped in a tad late, Stephen. So yeah, I was talking about that. When I do talk about it, people on training get really annoyed with me because I talk about value proposition, not value proposition, because people tend to get the balance wrong. They like talking about themselves. Yeah, most people like hearing about themselves. That's why we need to get the value side built stronger. So there are 8 elements, or cross-building. For me, cross-building a full value proposition. The first 4 are all customer side. So it's understanding the external drivers. So what does that mean that the customer's going to do? What objectives that create from their side? And what problems might they have in achieving those objectives? And what KPIs will they be measuring to see whether they've done that good job on that or not? A really smart salesperson will be starting to understand this stuff before they go into their side and saying, actually, well, we've got these strengths and this proof around our solution, which will give you that level of value. So there's a sequential thinking. Again, if we think that that is a full episode that you guys would like, get in touch with me. Get in touch with me via LinkedIn, get in touch with me in the network. Say, love to hear you talk about this stuff. I would massively appreciate this, because you helped me put the episodes together, and I know that they're landing because it's stuff that you want. Yep. Thanks. It'll be interesting to hear about sales approaches in different industries. Okay, Victoria. Yeah, I've made note of that then. So I do talk about engineering quite a lot. SaaS we tend to see is a little bit different in the way that they're sort of setting up disco demo and this sort of stuff. So again, I can put a little episode around that. This is good to have right in the next few months. If you've got a particular one you would like to hear about, I might well have worked in it. I've worked in quite a lot over the last 25 years. If not, I'll know someone who does, and I can bring them in. I know that guests down the line will be useful. Harold's put, indeed, how you sell a value proposition if the customer doesn't understand or recognize it. Looks like we're doing a value proposition one. Looks like we're going into value proposition. An interview is sort of selling yourself. Yep, it is. Absolutely, it is. So I was going to keep it to half an hour. I'm over time. Fail. Lose that. No worries at all. No worries at all. But I appreciate anybody who's getting involved in chat. Makes it more fun from this side as well. And hopefully you're having a bit of a giggle in there too. No guesses on everybody lives by selling something. I'll tell you. It's Robert Louis Stevenson. Robert Louis Stevenson, was that 200 years ago? Said that. Been around quite a long time. Daniel Pink came up with a more modern version of that, which is also a smashing book. Good. So I will start to wrap up now. As I said, I know that we were going to aim for half an hour. In the future, I was thinking of doing 15-minute input bit, and then if I've got enough questions, I can be answering those. But if I'm answering a full question around value prop, I'm happy to go into mini training mode. I'll do whatever is valuable for you guys. I can't sit here and talk about value and then not provide it, can I? I'm a massive hypocrite. So please ask, please reach out, please let me know what you need. In the meantime, I hope you have enjoyed this. Let me know. Yeah, I will be talking to you again in about a month's time when we've got the next episode ready to rock and roll. So I will end the session now. Take care, everyone.